Hi, I'm Anthony Marinelli, and I'm really happy to welcome you today to our second live stream, which is going to be an opportunity for us to introduce some new features for the first time. And we have a special guest today, Mr. Stephen Ray. He's my co-host on Stories in the Room, which is a channel about the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller album. And we've already done this. We've interviewed many of the key musicians that perform on the album. And they do some in-studio demonstration, and we talk about stories and things that happen, but most importantly about the music, which is what made Thriller such a special thing, and our experiences from that. And people have chimed in on their experiences since then and how that album has affected their lives and their music making. So Stephen is a former A&R executive, and he's a current film producer, and he is my co-host, and you can check out that channel. It's called Stories in the Room, and it's on YouTube, and there are shorts available on Instagram as well. So today I would like to introduce our moderator, my son Dante Marinelli.
Hey everyone.
There he is, and he's able to pop on screen for the first time, and he has a better mic, so we're not all yelling at an iPhone anymore. So we're really happy to be on this new format. Dante is a very talented singer and songwriter, and he produces artists, produces his own music, and he's the behind the scenes on a lot of the how my output is looking, the thumbnails, and we brainstorm on the videos and what kind of content to do. So reach out. We're here. We want to respond to things and, share the information that we've learned, over at least the information I've learned over decades of doing this, and Dante will chime in on a lot of the new stuff too. So our first segment is going to be called Rewind and Review. So it gives us the opportunity to put up a video, and I can demonstrate something, or if anyone has any questions about those videos, we can kind of look at it together, and then I'm happy to show anybody and answer your questions, or if it doesn't require me demonstrating, then fine. So we'll do that for a little bit, and then Stephen Ray will be able to jump in, and we'll do a Thriller Q&A the rest of the way out. So let's start with any questions out there, and we have the ability to look at videos, so let us know.
You want to move on to that segment?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Here we are. Let's see what the questions are looking like.
Do you have any FM synths?
I do. I have a Sinclavior. It's here right now, and I could have had a DX.
DX7.
Yeah, DX. I was just going to say DX7. I did have a DX7. The DX7 was a little bit difficult for me to program, because of the single little window. I know later on there was a better way to do it, but I just kind of got used to the Synclavier, and I'm able to program very quickly on that because there's a button for everything, and with my analog stuff, there's a button for everything, so it's much quicker. There's also Synclavier Go, which is an app for the iPhone that looks just like the Synclavier with a button for everything, and then there's a Synclavier Regen that just came out, their newest version, which is a desktop.
See this passage?
That's a great system too, and that's now available. So that's what I like for FM. There's the Arturia Synclavier. I like that a lot too. And I guess Waldorf, they make some great stuff. The Wave
Definitely.
stuff. So
Someone said, what's your favorite synth?
my favorite synth is the ARP 2600 because I know it. It's like, who's your favorite lady? My wife. It's important to know something, like the instrument that you play. So I can't really play 35 instruments, not with the same level of intimacy. So the ARP 2600 is the one I gravitate to, and I like the way it's laid out, it's got pitch, timbre, duration, amplitude horizontally, and all the control inputs vertically, and it's quick and easy, and it has a handle, and it has speakers. And so I'll do a video on it, but it's my favorite synth. But the synth that got me into it was the Moog Modular, and it's still really close to my heart, like the sound of that thing, and being able to patch everything keeps you intimately involved with every sound that you make. So I love that thing too. And then there's modern stuff. I mean, I love a lot of synthesizers, as you know, but you said favorite.
Okay, so I have the make any kick drum sound video pulled up.
Is there a question on that?
Not yet. I mean, I see some people say, what's the difference between analog versus FM synths?
Oh, well, the way you make sounds, like analog, we're getting a little bit of echo.
Because I want you to be able to hear it. Oh, sorry.
Analog synths are mostly subtractive synthesis. So you start with a waveform and then you filter things out for the most part. And then FM synthesis is additive synthesis. So it's like the difference between addition and subtraction, basically, right? You can think of it that way. So FM synthesis, you start with one sine wave, which is just a pure tone, and then you add another sine wave, and then you add another sine wave, and then you modulate that with a waveform. And by modulating that with an audio waveform, not a low frequency waveform that gives you vibrato, but an audio waveform, you create all these sidebands and harmonics that give you new waveforms. And then when you have less modulation, it's like the effect of filtering. But you're building from the bottom up versus having the sound and then taking stuff out of it. That's like the basic difference between the two.
All right. You want to watch this?
Yeah. Is there a question about it?
No, but I just pulled it up because it's one of our new ones.
You want to watch the whole video, or?
We'll just start it, yeah.
Hi, I'm Anthony Marinelli. I programmed 7 songs on Michael Jackson's Thriller album. Today I'd like to show you how to program any imaginable kick drum sound. You can do this on
And if you
many
have any extra point,
synthesizers.
you can
I'm choosing
jump
to
in
do
here.
it on the ARP2600 because I think it's really visual. All it needs to do is have the
Can you hear it?
ability to modulate the oscillator. So if you can send an envelope generator to the oscillator, you can get that pitch swoop that kick drums have, and you should be able to make any imaginable kick sound. And the reason I'm showing you this is because many times you have a kick and you kind of wish that it would do something different. And if you have a sample, you can play it lower, but you're changing the attack if you play it lower.
If you have any
and then you can always do that with
about it,
you know,
or any other video.
you know, resetting the time on your sampler, but it's never going to be exactly like having a sharp attack and making the tail longer, or making the attack a little bit slower and making the tail shorter. So let me show you how I do it. I start with a triangle wave or a sine wave, but I'm using a triangle wave today, so I have a little more harmonic, you know, frequencies in the sound if needed. I put it in the filter. These inputs go into the filter, and the filter is
I knew you'd say the ARP26.
basically closed all the way, and it's being
know. I
modulated
say the
by
ARP2600
the
a lot.
envelope generator. And it's a very quick attack, a little release time into the VCA that's modulated by the same envelope generator and into the mixer. Here's the kick drum. Now the advantage of doing it this way is I can make it longer. I can make it ring. I could have less noise. I can make it duller. I can make it a house kind of sound. I can give you a boom car bass drum.
Oh, look, David's there.
I don't know if you can even hear that on the speakers.
Hey, David.
Play this back on some big speakers if you want to hear this one. And I can make the release time really long. Or shorter. And I can control the pitch sweep here. So
Does
this
anyone have
kick drum
any
has
questions? Because we can move on to any video. I mean, I think the point of this segment is so that we can give you guys feedback on any questions you have about the content we've been putting out.
Yeah, and if not, I can answer a couple questions here. Like, do you have any modern
keyboard synths. Yes, I have the new Sinclavior Regen. That's really new and modern. And I like a lot of modern pedals. I have a lot of the old vintage pedals and tape delays and all that stuff, but I do like a lot of certain pedals, Red Panda pedals, and let's see,
The Death by Audio stuff.
Death by Audio is really great, and Maris pedals. I run the synth through a lot of those type of pedals, and then I find like those ones I buy like all their pedals, you know. But then I also get one-offs of modern ones that are really special.
Someone said, do you have a favorite synth for creating pads? King Ivy.
The Synths is pretty great because it has 3 different filters. It has like a bandpass filter and a high-pass filter. Like a lot of synths don't have that. I think that's why people like OBX synthesizers, because they have like all the different filters on them. So I like that a lot. Jupiter 8's good for pads, CS80. Those are all awesome.
I was going to pull up the Synths 10 tip just to show the band.
What
3
is the
filters.
best way to start
People
out
think when a
programming?
piano takes a real
Oh, you want to show what?
I was just going to show the filters on the Synths because you mentioned it.
Oh, you have them?
Yes, I do.
Unique. And I think when
The
you're
best way to
creating
start out
instruments,
programming, I think, is to,
like how drummers learn to play, you know, sometimes play along with records. Like this is something that I had to do with Michael Jackson. He would put sounds on a turntable, and he would say, "I like that sound," and then I would make it. I'd listen to it and practice, like just making sounds that are in your environment. Like make bird sounds if you hear birds out your window. You know, I used to make helicopters. I used to make like I would try to do it, and then you just get better and better at it. And you know, I'm helping, hopefully, in some of the videos, help you understand how to break sounds down. But I think it's just fun. You know, I think try to copy all the instruments like clarinet, violin, with analog synths, and get as close as you can, and then you'll start discovering things that are going to help you with pop music and everything else. It's good technique.
I was just going to show this.
I don't want to think that way. It's going to help. Every little bit kind of contributes to the whole. So I'll show you what I mean by giving your sound personality. I chose the Synths because it has a bandpass filter, which is kind of unique.
Yeah, so you
I
can
thought,
see
you
the
know,
filter section
when I'm
in
making
there.
a bass sound, there's all kinds of bass sounds that have a low pass
That's the best
filter, which
part of
sounds
it.
kind of like this. A smooth, sweet,
You see those
from
buttons
low to
that
high.
are where
But a
there's 4
bandpass
knobs,
filter
I
kind of
just pushed one.
works in the middle of the sound. And then I added portamento. Here's more.
The Synths is really cool.
Unique filters.
And I have a expression pedal. So I can get brighter when I want to, and I still have a hand-free.
Okay, here's a good question. When you're in a session and you build that sound, how do you record that setup so you can recall it later?
It's different for every synth.
Well, I record it,
I think he's talking about recall.
but I can't. No, but I was just saying, like,
Yeah.
we record it. I can't recall it later. I mean, I recall it because I remember how to make it, and if I hear it the next time, I can just recreate it, and I can get it pretty close, but as close as like a musician can like play a part. I mean, so many guitar players, like, they don't play the part exactly the same way every time, but I get it really close, and I don't really use presets. Like, I just learned from Rob Rosen how to save sounds on a Jupiter 8 and an OBX, because I never saved my sounds, and I needed to for a specific
You
reason.
need a cassette.
You can do it now. You can just do it with a DAW.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you don't even need it. It was designed for cassette, but now, I mean, I still don't like bothering with that. I just listen to the sound and then make the sound. So we can take maybe 1 or 2 more questions, and then we're going to bring in Stephen Ray.
Someone said a video talking about the creative process and coming up with ideas would be great. That would be a
Yeah,
good
we could
one.
do that. How do you find inspiration for sounds? The world. I mean, it's just there's a world full of sounds, and it's all music in a way. Sounds. They have pitches and they move and they say something to me. So records, like hearing sounds on records and in real life, I just find inspiration in all of that.
The Synths reminds me of the sound of the Korg MS-20.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
it
because you get those filters.
the multi-mode, like it's two of them?
The MS-20 gives you like bandpass filters because you have a high pass and a low pass, and then with the Synths you just have one bandpass, but it's actually rejecting frequencies and adding frequencies, kind of like combining a low pass and a high pass filter. How do you incorporate classic synthesizer in modern productions without sounding dated? Well, I mean, you're going to sound a little dated, but don't you think modern production has analog old
ton of
synthesizers
it.
in it? So,
And all of the digital stuff, I feel like, tries to emulate the
yeah,
old stuff.
but it's a combination of things, you know. It's basically your taste, whether you're going to sound dated or not, and the song, because if the song is cool, you can put all kinds of old stuff in it. I think that's the driver of the whole thing. And then, effects and having it be like clean is like that makes it sound new too. It doesn't sound like tape.
Modern mastering, too. Like it sound new.
Right. But I mean, sometimes I make it sound old too on purpose, like really bad, like wow and flutter, and bad frequency response. Well, you know what? I think it's time to bring in
Steven.
Yeah. Let me come around to the in the box. Sometimes we call it that. And I want to introduce my co-host for Stories in the Room, Stephen Ray, and we're going to be here to answer all kinds of Q&A about Thriller, because Stephen was there for everything during Thriller. So he's going to step over some cables here and sit next to me. My longtime friend, you're making it, and co-host.
Here we are.
So we're back together again. We've been doing some of these Q&As for Stories in the Room, and I wanted to bring them onto my channel and then also let you know about Stories in the Room, because there's some great stuff on there, and there's great demonstrations too, if you're more synthesizer stuff that, Stephen and I hosted a segment with Greg Fillinganes, and he demonstrated some pretty
very cool
iconic stuff.
Yeah, very
And
cool. Yeah.
remembered the times, what was going on, how those sound ideas came about, like it was all there. So I'd love to just be here while you ask Stephen a lot of questions. Anything really about Thriller and the making of Thriller.
I see there's a couple questions. I'm trying to recreate the bass of Thriller in the rehearsal of Dangerous from 1992. Any tips? I don't know it, honestly. Do you know it?
Well,
I think they're talking about the live tour.
oh yeah, they must be talking about the live tour
Yeah, the Dangerous tour.
on the Dangerous. Well, that would have been the last live tour he did was Bad, wasn't it?
What about the England one? Did that ever happen?
No, that never happened.
This is it, that one?
Yeah, This Is It never happened, unfortunately.
It was just rehearsals. Then.
Yeah, and it was just actually his anniversary. The anniversary of his passing was just the other day. So, but yeah.
Cornelius Mulholland Music says, is it true that Michael used the Shure SM7B on Thriller?
SM7B, yeah.
The same mic I have in front of me. right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
That's what's out there.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
I know,
pretty
that's-
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Matt Forger,
Yeah, Matt would really.
Matt said, yeah.
Yeah,
he agreed.
he would confirm that. Yeah, so.
And Matt Forger
Oh,
is
it was an SM7 no B.
No
no
B,
B.
no
apparently,
yeah.
not the B.
what's the so our sound guy Ben Rackless is holding up pieces of paper that don't have a B on it.
Right.
But Ben, what's the difference between the SM7 and the SM7B?
There's a difference in the capsule, so it sounds slightly different. I'm not sure completely the
Okay.
distinct differences, but it is
It's
a little bit different than what
different.
you get today. As an
Okay,
SM7B.
so if you buy an SM7B now, he said there's a slight difference in the capsule.
Okay.
So buy vintage.
Buy
Yeah,
vintage. Yeah,
yeah.
here we go again. Buy expensive. But yeah, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. And Matt Forger is a guest on Stories in the Room, so you could hear his, if anything about engineering Thriller, we covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he can break down everything from the miking of the kits, drum kits to everything. Yeah,
And the miking of Michael,
and the miking of Michael,
which was so
Yeah.
amazing, like, and how they wanted to capture all of his body sounds, his snaps and his claps and his feet.
His feet, his movement. He was constantly dancing when he was, doing his vocals. So, yeah,
And it's all captured on
Yeah.
an SM7.
yeah, yeah. You can hear him snap his finger on Billie Jean if you listen to it very carefully with headphones. Yeah.
Matt told me there was a 1176 involved too, like the compressor.
That was the compressor.
Compressor. Oh,
at
okay.
12 to 1.
Yeah, I mean,
what he
remember, no plugins.
Yeah.
So there were like a couple of compressors,
Yeah.
and a couple of reverbs.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to get, we had to choose. Like, I mean, Bruce Swedeen, the
Yeah.
brilliant engineer, and with his team, including Matt.
Yeah, you didn't have the options that you do now back then.
No, no.
You had to really know, not that you don't need to know what you're doing now, but then you really had to focus.
Yes.
Because you didn't have all those options.
Yeah.
King MJ Forever and Ever says, who I see all the time. He's the big supporter of our
Thank
channel.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Favorite pranks that were done in the studio during the Thriller project? I know this was a good one for Steven.
Favorite pranks were Muscles, his snake. That was one of the ones that really scared.
He brought his snake in?
Yeah, we came to the studio one morning and he had gotten there. Actually, we came a little later, and he had gotten there earlier, and there was a bag sitting on top of a tape machine that wasn't being used in the corner. And normally I would have Quincy's backpack. I had my backpack and bag, and I would put my backpack there, his backpack there, with all the stuff in it and music and everything. And this particular time, I gave the backpack to Quincy because I had to go do something else, and he went to go put the backpack down, and the bag shifted. The bag just moved, and he jumped back, and then you look over, and and Michael, well, Smelly, is like going, it was pretty.
He apparently
It
liked
was
pranking
pretty.
people a lot.
Yeah, so Muscles was his boa constrictor, and he would bring to the studio, and a couple of the times, other pranks. Late at night, I was sitting on the couch in the little reception area, and I kind of dozed off. We had been working 13-hour days, at a minimum, and I look up, and on the door hinge, Muscles was wrapped around the door hinge, and Michael put him up there right over my head. And
Once
I woke
again.
up. There again, he's standing off down the hallway laughing.
The snake.
But yeah, Muscles. But
But
yeah.
didn't he do another snake? Because Lorraine was talking about that, or you, when we were talking about the shooting of the Thriller video. Wasn't the snake showing up there in the tree or something?
He brought Muscles. That was the same snake. But I wasn't around at that point. He was a prankster on the video, because when he was dressed in the wolf,
Scaring people.
scaring
right?
people, when he was in wolf character, he would jump out from behind the tree, but yeah, he was Michael was a lot of fun.
Someone said,
was a
thank
lot of
God he
fun.
didn't bring the spiders. Did he have spiders?
Yeah, he had spiders at the house, but not at yeah.
What kind of spiders?
I don't know. I just know they were pretty large. Yeah. I think they were, African spiders or from South America somewhere, but they were pretty big. Yeah.
It's pretty
But
funny.
yeah.
Is it true, Nick P asks, is it true that Quincy had a mono MW radio on the console to listen to how the tracks would sound on a small device?
Oratones.
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 Ortone speakers.
Yeah, Oratone speakers. They really wanted to make sure that, I mean, you got to remember back then, the majority of people had AM radio, didn't have FM. So they wanted to make sure that everyone was covered in terms of their experience, what they were going to experience. So they made sure that the kick and the bass of everything that was mixed would come through on an AM radio, and the Oratone represented that.
But
pretty
he didn't
much.
use a radio?
No, I
How
don't.
would you get the signal into it?
What, the Oratones?
No, the radio.
No, the radio. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. He didn't.
Well, you know, James Anthony Carmichael, who produced Lionel Richie,
Uh-huh.
I was fortunate enough to work on Can't Slow Down, and he used a realistic, he was very distinctive about that, you know, whatever that is, like we would just make a tape,
And then you'd
cassette, yeah.
Oh yeah, we
Put
did
the
that.
tape in.
Oh yeah.
so you'd reference on it. on
Oh yeah,
cassette.
we would reference on
On a radio.
on a boombox.
Okay, well then there you go.
Yeah, yeah.
There you
But I
go.
thought you meant hooking
Do
it
you
up
remember
through
Quincy
the,
doing that?
Yeah, we would do that. He had a boombox, but that was at the house, not in the
Okay,
studio.
okay. Well, so then,
Yeah.
you know,
No, I was thinking in terms of something that was hooked up,
Totally.
running through the board or
it's
something.
totally
That's what I thought,
important.
too.
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
no, it's not true.
These guys
yeah.
are geniuses, but they do simple things, you know.
Yeah.
Among all the genius things they do, but it's really important to not get carried away. We're in a studio with like Glenn Phoenix's amazing sounding Westlake studio.
Yeah.
And then you realize
Those
people aren't going to
monitors
hear
were-
it that way.
Right, exactly. I mean, they were really thoughtful about, and Michael was as well. Everyone in that room was thoughtful about what was going to be the experience of the consumer.
Heck yeah. So play your mixes back on your phones and your laptops
Yeah, definitely.
right now for sure.
Yeah, if it
'cause
sounds great through your phone, then then you're doing the right
that's
thing.
how people are hearing it.
Yeah.
So there's two
funny.
questions in here about Hot Street. One of them is, did you program the sounds on unreleased songs from Thriller like She's Trouble or Hot Street?
I
And-
did not.
And the other one was the song Hot Street supposed to make the final track list for Thriller but had to get pulled at the last second to shorten the album?
I don't remember that song.
You don't remember it?
Yeah. I don't remember that.
Like what was the song that got pulled because
Well, there were-
P.Y.T. came in at the end.
Yeah, there was another. I can't.
Carousel.
And Behind the Mouth.
There was Carousel, and then there was another one that this young boy band that was signed to MCA. I remember they covered it, but I can't remember. It wasn't Carousel. Carousel was something else.
But P.Y.T. had to bump something, right?
Yeah, no, it didn't bump any. P.Y.T. was something that I don't remember bumping anything. I think they had already.
So there was a hole for it.
Yeah, there was
the
a
other
hole for
songs
it.
weren't really
Yeah.
making it.
Yeah, Quincy wanted to fill that hole of something funky that wasn't there, you know, and there were it was a vibe thing, you know. You listen back down, you know. We would constantly listen back down to the tracks,
Yeah.
and Human Nature filled a hole that did replace Carousel.
Which
I remember
one? Human Nature did. Okay, so that was a
But-
song that it bumped.
Yeah, but there
something.
were two others that were there that I don't remember, but P.Y.T. was created especially to fill a
So
funky void. As
Do you
I like
remember
to say.
this? Because you said you like would listen to it and get a vibe. When I was working on Greg Fillingane's solo album
Mm-hmm.
with him, he would lay out note cards on the ground that would have the song names on them and like a mood or something like that about it. And then he would look at it and try to figure out how to program the album, like what order. And he said he got that from Quincy.
He did. Quincy made cards constantly.
Note
And-
cards.
Yeah, note cards, and I would organize those back at the house in a file, you know. And,
So that's so interesting
yeah.
because you can't hear the note cards.
no,
But
no.
seeing
But
it's like-
it recalls something for
Yeah.
him. It's very personal, you know.
but you see it in a different way, even the titles, because titles evoke, like I had a doctor that would tell me to sometimes if you can't decide, look at someone's business card. Now that's kind of a thing of the past, but
Right.
look at the business card and look at the name, and sometimes you might get a vibe off that, and and maybe off the note cards too. You do get something from the titles, and getting away from the music too, because you still know the music.
Yes,
Right?
yes, exactly.
I found
Yeah.
that very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. He would do that. It would bring up something for him emotionally, and he could go take it from there.
Thank you so much. Thriller is a high benchmark of live musicianship, studio production, and the experience on the dance floor. How is it important for producers to join the dance themselves?
To join the dance, the dance of
The dance of-
Thriller.
The record, yeah.
The record, yeah.
in producing their new stuff. Do you think?
I think it's mostly asking how important it is for producers to understand the language of dance when it comes to making music. That's kind of what I picked
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I think that's, it's
Well, one thing that Matt used to say is what made Michael so unique is that he was always looking at, this was Matt's point of view, always looking at music like from a dancer's point of view.
yeah.
And he would say that dancers are really unique people. They're really different and they view the world differently.
the way they move their body,
Yes.
you know, and the way things hit their body, they know right away if it's like connecting.
Yeah, and
or whatever.
vocally, how it affects their vocal. You know, you have to remember as a very small boy, you know, he was dancing before the family realized that he was such a really great singer. He was only like 4 or 5, so he was constantly dancing to James Brown and so
And
that's
Sammy.
and Sammy. But even when he was that young, it was really about James Brown, and because James was so visible, at that point, and so it goes from there. That's the origin of I would think for him.
Totally.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, to answer the question even more thoroughly, I guess it is important to like move your own body a little bit. I mean, it is a dance, and if it feels right, it makes you move.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the thing that I think because I've said this before to a number of upcoming artists that are doing dance material is study Michael, because whenever you saw him live, his pitch was always on point. His breathing was always on point, because what he mastered was you dance, you make the move, do the vocal. You make the move, you do the vocal. Make the move, do the
That's
vocal.
so interesting.
And other performers that came along later didn't study that. You go see them live, and their pitch was, well, you're like, oh,
So
whoa, what
interesting.
is going on? Well, because he studied the masters. He studied Fred Astaire, Sammy Davis Jr. He studied them.
Right,
you
and
know,
you said
and
breathe
James
too.
Brown.
You said breathe when you first
And
started
breathe.
saying that
Yes,
sentence.
exactly.
That's huge, and I know
Yeah.
he did a lot of breathing stuff with Seth Riggs
A
too.
lot of breathing stuff. with Seth
Special,
Riggs.
like
Yes.
for singers, so you
Yes.
respect that you can't do like 2 things at once at the highest level.
Exactly.
So that's
not,
awesome.
Not over a 2-hour set in an
Totally.
arena. You know what I
But it
mean?
was intuitive
So,
for him how he would go back and forth between
Yeah.
the singing and the dancing.
Yeah, James did it. Sammy Davis did
I
it.
never
Fred Astaire
thought about
did it.
that. That's
Yeah.
an incredible point you're
Yeah.
bringing up.
Yeah, he shared that with me when we were, when I was at the house, or when he was, all those times he would dance in the lobby. He would take a break and go dance in a little small lobby.
That's where Stephen has
with-
so
He
much
would dance on his
insight.
breaks.
Yeah, he would while we were recording, he'd take a break and he'd go in a little boom box while he was waiting for his food to come, because he was a vegetarian vegan way back then. So he didn't order food with us.
The Golden Temple of Conscious Cookery. I know that place.
Yes, remember that spot?
Because
Yeah.
I knew it, and I said it to Michael, because I was stealing juice out of the fridge,
Right, you were.
and it was
Yeah.
Michael's stash of juice, it was watermelon juice.
You were actually the only one, I think, that he let have that juice.
He let me have it. We were talking about good eating and
Yeah,
all that kind of thing.
yeah,
But you have so much insight, because you study,
Yeah,
and then you were
yeah.
around you were around it all the time.
yeah.
It's little things like that. Like I just never even thought of that before, because I'm not a singer and I don't go on stage.
I was going to say, especially for the dance stuff, if you want to know more about it, watch the videos on Stories in the Room with Lorraine and
Yes.
Matt Forger.
Yeah.
Honestly, especially Matt, because he was there so much recording Michael's
Yeah.
vocals.
Yeah.
Matt gets into the really deep part of it.
Yeah,
too.
he really does. Yeah, he really does.
He's the engineer, and he's like supposed to be doing the technical stuff, but he was deep into the emotion. I think that's why Michael liked working with him.
Yeah, I do too. I'm absolutely positive about that. And like we discussed, on those episodes, that Matt was physically there longer than anyone.
Yeah.
He was there, first one in the room, last one to leave at 1, 2 in the morning.
He had to make the cassettes when it was
Yeah,
all done.
yeah. Before we left, everyone took a set. Quincy, Bruce, Rod, and Michael would take cassettes home, and we'd actually play them in the car.
And put the
But
yellow.
CDs did not exist.
Does anyone have any of those cassettes?
I have.
I have
some.
one.
You have one?
I have a Nakamichi. It was a Nakamichi.
Nakabichi.
I have one from one of the E.T. storybook album songs.
Yeah, I have one of those as well. But I have I have 3. Yeah.
And Matt also had to put across everything that yellow tape, like that. Do not. It was like a police line. Do not cross, because you didn't want anybody to touch the knobs, like
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
outboard gear and on the.
No automation, so don't touch the board.
Don't touch.
Yeah.
Were the recording sessions for Thriller's instrumentals filmed? Does their video exist in the vault somewhere?
Yeah. This UK group came in at some point during the ET storybook. I think there's some footage But yeah, when
Not much, though.
Not much. No, when
It was
Spielberg
just like a day or two where they
yeah,
came
yeah,
and
no, they
filmed.
came in, yeah, because
Yeah.
Quincy didn't want any, anyone interrupting like that. We were very particular about who came to the studio because you don't want to interrupt the energy and the vibe.
It's different, like no selfies.
Most of the
and all
pictures
that.
I've seen were from the Girl Is Mine session,
Yeah,
where like
yeah,
Paul
they
is
were,
there.
Well,
yeah, Paul and
You know what happened? There was a Polaroid camera hanging around because they used to have to take Polaroid,
Matt.
yeah, of like the settings. So
Yeah.
occasionally it'd be like, oh, let's get a photo, like Paul McCartney's here or something like that. And then they would just use the Polaroid. So you would have like Polaroid images that would randomly turn up. And I think, that was how it was done.
Yeah, I mean, I have Polaroids that no one's seen that Matt took. The Polaroid, I think, that's on the site that we showed with Michael and I.
Yeah.
That was the night he performed Billie Jean. After we took that photo, it was about 8 o'clock at night or something like that. But Matt took that with the Polaroid.
There-
And other
there you go.
shots of us that no one's seen, that all of us clowning around and Smelly and I with his snake, holding his snake together. It was a lot of fun stuff. But Matt, that was the Polaroid. There were no paparazzi. Thank God. It would have been a nightmare for us if there had been.
Did they know you guys were there? Or they just
No, other than those girls those young girls that chased us from the Beverly Center, that one particular time. But other than that, and those young women never came back, which was really a blessing.
Well,
So-
there was like a double though sometimes, right? Joe. Remember when, like in the back of Westlake, I remember they had to do it at least one day or 2 days. There was like people hanging out back there, and they sent somebody out like a fake Michael.
Yeah, a couple. But then that just went away. Thank goodness. Because we parked in the alley. So
Because even then, he couldn't go out on the street really.
no, him and I we'd get in the car and go out and remember I told you when the tape machines would lock up. You're down for a couple hours and Matt has to recalibrate everything and.
we were just talking about this before we started. There used to be like breaks in the session day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rewind the tape.
Right. Oh, yeah. It
But
was
then
totally-
Michael would go to the Beverly Center.
Yeah, well, we went
in
that
a
one. Well,
disguise.
we only did that once with Nelson, with his assistant Nelson, and then when we got chased out of there, but because they figured out, they saw that he, one of the women in the elevator coming down saw his white socks and loafers,
And the way he moves
and
too,
figured-
you can put a disguise on.
Yeah, he had all the.
But
he
he
had a
still
beard
moves.
and the hat and the whole thing, and
A beard and a hat, but it's moving like Michael
yeah,
Jackson.
yeah. So it was pretty. It was pretty funny. But other times we would take drives, and I'd jump in his car, and he drove his Rolls back then, which made us very nervous. So we would go for drives, and he shared a lot. It was really, really special. Just the two of us. It was really great. Yeah.
It's awesome. Mathis Champs asks, were there many demos for each song on the album? I know we just talked about it a little bit, but
Well, there was always the main demo,
Yeah, it was really,
the one Rod made.
right. Rod would come over with very, demos that he would make in the UK, in London. And then other than that, they really weren't what was recorded at
Yeah.
Michael's before we came to Westlake.
But those Rod
Those
demos
were-
were just
those Rod-
everything on there. Like the
yeah.
full arrangement was there.
Yeah.
And then it was a matter of just basically deconstructing that and having players like Greg, put their personality into the sound.
And you,
Well, I mean, Greg,
creating sounds. That,
I made sounds, and I like started with the ones that Rod
you had a reference. Yeah.
I had a reference, and then
Yeah.
Michael would, a couple nights, it was amazing for me, like to just have him, hanging out with him and him playing sounds on the turntable.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
just
that's so.
matching
yeah.
the sounds and then coming back the next day and sort of drawing from that.
Nice.
So there was some newness, but like Rod had it there, and then Quincy was just like overseeing the whole thing and
Yeah.
making sure that it all just flowed and the
Yeah.
personality. Everybody could contribute. Like it was such a free
Yeah.
feeling that you could do your best in a situation that was really conducive to it.
Yeah,
To
'cause you-
doing your best.
Yeah, because we talked about this before. Quincy, his very special human being that he is, he empowered everyone. People felt empowered and felt safe.
Yeah.
And those are very, and and
He
the
made-
idea of textures, you know.
Well, you were already there, but like I would just come in and nobody knew me, and there was a tight knit group of people.
Yeah.
And Quincy made me feel totally accepted, hug right when I got in.
Yeah.
And then everybody believes that, like if he brings you in, and I was accepted by everybody, and I was just like, I was like a kid,
Yeah,
and
so
I'm
was
hanging
I.
out with these guys I have seen on record credits,
Right.
and they were amazing, and
Yeah.
and I got to have a lifelong relationship with many of them. So
Yeah. It was surreal because Anthony and I were so young. We were the youngest in the room with with Michael, and to be in there with those players that we've all studied and heard on other records. Quincy had the ability to calm you down, that you weren't like going to be like, oh my God, I'm in this room.
Right.
Is this really happening? And
Yeah.
we just became a family. Really, it was like a family.
I thought this is a Quincy question. Tabloid Junkie says Quincy Jones said that the first Thriller album, Master, sounded awful and unreleasable. Does the first mix still exist? And it would be interesting to listen to.
I don't know if you're gonna
No.
get it.
Greetings
No.
from Germany.
Oh no! Hello, Germany.
Thank you
No,
for
it
being
does
here.
not. It does not exist. That was wiped.
It was burned.
But yeah, that first mix, the first final mix, it wasn't the master. It was the final mix, and it was because everyone was pretty burnt out. Working on the E.T. Storybook album and Thriller at the same time. It was a lot of hours, and Bruce went back and he fixed it, basically.
Do you know that he erased it, or like what happened to it?
Yeah, I remember things that were stated in the room. Get rid of that. Yeah,
Maybe not so politely.
yeah, because there was no point of you didn't have to go back and reference anything. He just Bruce literally, and I think Matt's book is literally started from scratch.
So I thought this was kind of an interesting question to lead into that. What was the purpose of having like the raw demos and then rebuilding the tracks back up to what it is today?
Well, because Rod would write, he would, he was 100% writer. He didn't co-write. It was all his vision, these songs, and he would create these demos. People forget Rod didn't start with Quincy. He wrote all those hits for Heatwave. He was a musician in a band, touring, platinum albums, and when Quincy found him, so he would write. He would do what he would normally do in the UK. He would come over with demos that he had, like Anthony had stated.
But I think the question is asking, like, why not just track to the demos then and have that be the song?
Because Quincy knows, like, he casts musicians.
So he knew, like, we could take these elements to, like,
he's
the
like a
next
film
level.
director.
Yeah.
Yes,
And it'd be
exactly.
like just doing, like, you get your show up and you get funding, and then you have to get the right people to go in and perform it, because it takes it to a new level. It's like performance. It's not just the writing sounds, right?
Right.
Then they're performed, and back then they were performed together with people,
Right.
looking at each other and vibing off each other, and
Right.
filling in, like, and making the sections come to life, and then transitioning. So all that life happened by bringing in the musicians. That didn't happen on the demos.
Right.
The demos just had, like, the song and the unbelievable arrangement that we didn't really have to mess with that much. But the contribution from the musicians is like it's intangible and invaluable.
Exactly.
It's everything.
Yeah.
And it is to Michael for sure, because he did his vocal to, like, the real playing tracks.
Yeah, and that's why I made the point about Rod coming from a band, because he understood the importance of the engagement of other human beings on something that he had written alone. So, like Anthony referenced to, film or television, yeah, you have the script, but okay, but who's going to be, why Morgan Freeman, why Robert De Niro plays this? You read the script and you go, oh, and that's what Quincy would do.
Oh,
He would,
yeah.
Because they're
he would,
perfect for it.
he would see faces. He would see,
Yeah.
and he understood the history of all these musicians. And like he said, he would cast, no different than Spielberg would do in a film.
Yeah, and he was casting, like, the Laurence Oliviers, and,
Yeah, exactly.
Jack Nicholson's
Yeah.
in music, and
Yeah.
they bring so much personality to music.
Yeah.
I thought this was an interesting one because we have one right in front of us. Paul Manning Remix says, if I'm not mistaken, the Synclavior was used on the album. If so, whose Synclavior was it, being such an expensive piece to kit at the time?
It was very expensive at the time.
man.
Anthony?
Got something in my eye off that question.
I wish I could show it, but we have a Synclavier 2 set up directly.
It's the same Synclavier, you know, that was, it was mine. It was mine and Brian Banks. I really do have something in my eye. That question got me. Yeah, I bought it with Brian, you know, and we just got a loan from David Abel, who owned a piano store.
Wow.
The most generous,
David was, man,
unbelievable person.
great guy. Yeah.
And he gave us a loan, like 2 kids, and we managed to pay it off. But like that was our Synclavier, and we brought it in. Got the call from Quincy, I think through Tom Baylor.
Yeah, Baylor.
And because
Hey, Tom.
yeah, if you're watching,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And Tom had a Synclavier.
Yeah, sure
and
did.
we were friends with him, and I think that's how it all went down, you know. But yeah, we had one, and we really knew how to use it. We had done one movie, like it was really big. It was a John Badham film,
Right.
and it was right after Saturday Night Fever, and he was the director on that. And so, you know, we were the ones that could come in and do it.
Such a unique sound that
Yeah, it's great.
that is just so. I remember I hadn't heard anything like that. I mean, there was all the other gear
Yeah.
that we were working with, and then when they started playing that, and you were programming, I thought, whoa,
And-
this is a whole other level of instrumentation.
Well, it was FM synthesis, which people had never heard. The DX7 wasn't really happening. And then it was no sampling, though. It was just FM synthesis that we had on Thriller. There was monophonic sampling available, but we just didn't use it.
Didn't use it.
We didn't use it on Thriller. There was just FM on it. And the Billie Jean bass sound is a combination of Synclavier, FM, mixed with a little analog synth, but all coming out of the Synclavier, and Louis Johnson.
And Louis Johnson. And see, that's what when I referenced when I was talking about textures. You know, Quincy understood how to, you know, do that. You know, you have live
Yeah.
Louis Johnson with Anthony and what they're
Well,
doing.
Greg's playing
And
it.
Greg-
We
no,
just
but I mean,
program
but
it.
I'm talking in terms of texture programming.
Yeah. We made the sound. I mean, Michael
Yeah.
always wanted
Greg
something
played
different.
it, but he programmed it.
Michael wanted something different all the
Right.
time. And it's probably one of the most complex sounds on all of Thriller.
It is,
If you
it
can
is.
believe it, the Billie Jean bass, because it consists of 4 different sounds at the same
Once
time.
again, with the headphones, everyone out there.
You could hear that.
Yeah,
You'll
can
hear
it.
your Synclavier FM, and it has like a tone that doesn't change across the whole keyboard, and then it has the pitches. So it's FM with an analog sound, and then there's another sound that just kind of plays bump, 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 bump. But it's not the chords. It's
not
just
the
it's a
chords.
bass note accent.
Right.
It was brought to my attention by Greg Fillinganes, but it's in there.
Yeah.
And then Lewis playing. So there's 4 sounds that make up the Thriller. I mean the Billie Jean bass. So pretty complicated. And for back then to tie up all those tracks.
Oh, yeah.
It had to be
No,
bounced down.
Someone said no real bass. There's definitely real bass.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
Louis
Yeah,
Johnson.
Louis Johnson.
Louis Johnson
Yeah.
from the Brothers Johnson that Quincy had produced years earlier.
Oh yeah. You
and
hear it a lot. Like
hear it a lot.
it's doubled, so you don't notice it as much. But he gives it like he holds the notes a little bit longer into the
yeah.
downbeats.
Yeah.
And then also when you hear the bridge, it's like you hear him all over the fretboard,
Right.
so you can hear it a lot
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So people are really wanting me to ask this question about the drum machine. Sorry, I just lost it. Any tips on programming drums and the percussion on the Thriller album? And I think the Thriller song.
Well, the percussion is
Well,
live.
Yeah, I was gonna say percussion is live.
Even like those congas on
that's,
Thriller?
yes, that's
Paulinho.
Paulinho da Costa, who is I believe the most recorded percussionist in contemporary music.
Wow.
Amazing, and a great human being.
But tips on programming drums?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're there to support the song. You know.
yeah.
I think know the song, and know where you are in the song, and what like is needed. Like because sometimes you don't really need to do too much, and sometimes you need to do more. You know, depending on what the song needs. And I think that's kind of it. And then the transitions. I think drums are really important. In like the basic transition is a fill and a cymbal, you know, but there's also other ways where you kind of change up the beat, you know, change up. And Steven's a drummer, but this is like basic, you
Yeah.
know. But you need to think about it. Don't just start plastering drums on things. You know, listen to the song.
Well, if
Yeah,
you look
you know-
at Thriller, the Lindrum is nuanced. You know, you got the 808 clap. That's
Right.
just like its own thing. Then it has like all the original Lindrum sounds.
Well, you know, Thriller is.
And then
the-
there's live drums just in that beginning bit there.
But the thing about Thriller, because that bass line, it's really a Latin song, and you don't think about it, but it's a merengue.
It is a
Because the
merengue,
merengue beat
yes.
goes dun 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 boom
dun, 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 boom.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
so the drums are basically supporting a merengue. You just got the like a samba kind of a kick drum just going all the time, and then like Dante said, there's some colors like 808. There's like sort of electronic colors that are introduced, but then it's supporting the bass line.
Yes, it
and
is.
that's the motor. It's like a Jackson song where there's always like a drum and
There's
bass
always a
motor,
drum
you know.
motor. Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's like, so if you were programming drums on Thriller, you'd have to think like, well, what is this? And you identify it. Oh, it's a Latin beat. It's a classic Latin beat. So then you do that, but then you do like a modern take on a merengue, and then you have Thriller, you know. But it's not like veering off and doing some other syncopated thing that's not related, you know.
Yeah. And there's always a balance of live, like you were just saying, live and programmed. You know, there was always that balance. Like why
Yeah.
live drums on Billie Jean and not on not programmed.
Right. And on Baby Be Mine.
On Baby Be Mine. Right.
Dugu.
On Dugu. Yeah.
Someone says, I loved your work on board games. Was it the Synclavier?
It was. It was the Sinclavior. It's all Synclavior, yeah.
Yeah.
And some of those sounds are on the Synclavier regen. Like I did Bank 1. So there's the War Game sounds that are available if you want to play around with them.
On the new Synclavier. It's out, right? The new Synclavier?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
out.
it's
You could go buy it. I saw this question earlier. I can't find it anymore. But it basically asked, what would you do back in the day if you hit a wrong note while recording synth part or guitar parts? Would you have to start again, or would Bruce punch you back in? How did it work?
He'd punch you back in.
I was gonna say he'd punch you back in.
He'd punch
Yeah.
you in. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's part of,
Yeah.
you know,
Unless the musician was like no, let me lead into it.
Totally.
Sometimes, but mostly they would just go back and he would punch.
yeah, but it wasn't as cleaned up. Like if you went into the multi-tracks right now, it's just not perfect.
Yeah.
Because it was about a performance, you
Right,
know, and
exactly.
we didn't get into that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole performance. Every synth line, every guitar
It's
part.
hand
There's
played.
no quantizing and
It's
MIDI.
a feel.
No.
It's a feel, and that's you and I talk about this all the time. That's one of the reasons why we believe the album touched so many people outside of the media
Yeah.
of MTV and all the things that help promote and market it. But it's why it's still today when you and I sit and listen to it together. It's a feel that because it's not exact.
I think when you see in the videos and stories in the room, you see Greg play the parts. It sounds it's Greg playing it. That's the sound,
Right.
as well
Yeah.
as the ARP and
That's
everything
true.
else. That little the articulation and all that
Yeah.
builds into the character of the sound.
Yeah,
I think.
human
Yeah.
engagement
Yeah.
is very important.
It'd be
I
like-
always talk
Totally.
about that.
It'd be like going out for Indian food, but they can't put any spice in it.
Sure.
So they make the thing,
Right.
they put it all
love that.
together, right? The potatoes and all that stuff, but then there's no curry on the thing.
Right.
And then,
I love
and
that
then, but
analogy.
seriously, but then when Greg plays it, he puts the sauce on it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's essential.
Yes.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. If you guys have anyone that you want to get out on a thriller note. Greg is such a great keyboardist.
Yeah.
know.
What was MJ's writing process like? How many of the songs would he have in his head? And how much melodies and rhythms would be suggested by outside partners?
Rhythms from outside partners.
Yeah, but start with
No.
you know so
No.
much about
Yeah.
Michael, what was in his head, and he's singing the songs to you, beatboxing.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah. No, that's what I said. The outside parties in terms of Michael's writing. It was coming from his spirit, from his head, and once again, the origin of it. It's just from him, be it rhythmical or, later, on certain, because I was thinking about this, if you remember on Thriller, the ballads were written by Rod, right? On Off the Wall, Tom Baylor wrote "She's Out of My Life," right? Stevie Wonder wrote "Can't," I Can't Help It, but then later, on Bad, one of my favorite Michael songs is "I Can't Stop Loving You," and it showed that him writing a ballad, that he did with Saida Garrett.
true.
Think about that. On Off the Wall, he didn't write a ballad. On On Thriller, he didn't write a ballad. Those were Rod Temperton songs and Tom Baylor songs and Stevie Wonder. But then on that, he wrote. I love that song.
I saw an interview when he was a kid, and it was like a national TV interview, and he was maybe, I don't know, like 13 or something, but he just said, I like fast songs.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe it took a while.
Yeah, but even when you listen to songs like I Can't Stop Loving You, I mean he just that's the simple. I just can't stop loving you. And so when you would see him perform that, his shoulders are doing that thing. That rhythm was always there. Lady in My Life, the performance on that is just still outside of Human Nature. That vocal performance when he goes into that tag, he goes into that Teddy Pendergrass thing at the end. That was the only place that Bruce punched on that song. Quincy said, "Hey man, I want that Teddy thing. I want you to beg for it."
But Stephen told me about hearing Billie Jean for the first time, and it was all in his head.
Yeah, he sang that in my ear. It blew my mind.
And my
with dummy lyric.
I mean, this is what you told me, and he was beatboxing. He was
he was
the
doing
whole
all that
thing.
stuff.
He said, check this out.
Yeah.
He came up with the galactic symbol too, right? The Beat It intro sound.
Well, he heard that.
He didn't come up with it, but he was like, I want this in my song.
Yeah, he heard that on the Sinclavior demo record.
Right,
the blue vinyl. That's what happened.
Yeah.
It's pretty, and like the drum cases and stuff.
Yeah, that was...
The production elements he added are actually really
that was
interesting and stand out.
The first day I showed up, and I had all this synth stuff in the hallway and all that, there were drum cases everywhere. And that's the day he was doing like the Beat It, like bashing on the drum cases.
Yeah.
And I just remember the door would open and I would hear like, bah! Bah, this gigantic sound, like with the reverb and everything.
Yeah.
They were really, he listened really loudly.
Yes,
the monitors, so it was just blasting.
It was just that was the perfect accent to what the great Jeff Porcaro did. Those drums were done at Sunset Sound, and it was just a perfect accent.
They must have already done Beat It, right? Did he did that as an overdub, right? On the
he
drum?
did as an overdub. Yeah,
he had to.
Yeah.
Okay. The camera went out for a second. All right. Well, I think that's time.
Okay.
You guys
well,
do an outro.
Thank you, everyone. I mean, so this is our second episode. And we're going to continue to improve more technology, bring new technology, and hopefully it helps, spread the message of music and creativity, songwriting, and living in a world with good vibes through music.
Yes, which is so needed.
It's
yeah.
That's our contribution, hopefully. So, and we want to hear from you guys. Hopefully. Because you're gonna take that baton and keep on going.
Yeah, and then share your experience. Like we're sharing ours.
Yeah, you just feel compelled to at a certain point. So, thank you again for being here.
Thank
and
you.
We'll see you in a couple weeks. Another live stream.
Make sure to check out Stories in the Room. There's some amazing moments of all of this Michael stuff. It's like an endless resource of Michael stories. Make sure to like and subscribe over there.
Yeah,
and
for
at
sure.
Anthony Marinelli Music.
Yeah. We have some new videos coming out soon, especially some new Thriller stuff.
I'm putting one out with Greg, like right after this. So
great.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye, guys.